Hello and welcome to the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast. I'm your host, Rosa Hart, and joining me today is the space nurse, Christine Rincon. Christine is a critical care nurse and paramedic with more than a decade in trauma ICU, resuscitation, and critical care flight and ground operations. She now serves as Director of Space Medicine for Sheet Orbits and as a research fellow at the Advanced Space Life Research Institute, where she studies power dynamics in isolation. She just won third place in the Space Medicine Hackathon, during Massachusetts Space Week. Wow. She's the author of the Aerospace Acute Care and Trauma Nursing chapter in an upcoming 2026 Springer Nature textbook on aerospace nursing. And she's on a mission to show nurses that the space industry needs them. The roles already exist. So, Christine, the innovator, welcome to the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I was very excited when you approved me.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you're a podcaster yourself too, right?
I am.
That's amazing. What kind
Yes.
of people do you interview on your podcast before we get going on the rest
So
of this?
I have a couple of type of people that I interview. So I like
Mhm.
to interview nurses that are already in space medicine. And so
Yeah.
those roles actually exist. It's just that
Wow.
nurse is nowhere in the title. So I like to,
Oh.
on one side, yes, bring awareness to the types of roles that they have in
Mhm.
NASA and in aerospace.
Yeah.
And then the other type of person that I interview is nurses that are specialized in their field. So recently I had a very prominent burn care nurse from
Oh.
the UK. And
Mhm.
we actually she talked about earth burn care. And then I kind of added on, okay, did you know that fire is different in space? Burns would be different in space.
Oh.
And then once we established those two baselines, we kind of started talking about like future burn care. So it's like, okay, if this is how it is on Earth and this is how it is in space, what are the gaps in the knowledge
Mhm.
of burn care? And how could we fix that? So we were really just like, we were
Wow.
literally just on our podcast, just like dreaming up like how
Yeah.
burn care could be in the future. It was really cool.
That is amazing. And I
Yeah.
think, discovery like that is one thing that people love about podcasts and just how conversations evolve and things. And you get to have conversations like that with people that you would never like run into at the grocery store, or never get
Absolutely.
assigned to in the course of your current work, right? So that is so exciting. I'm going to have to start listening to this because I'm so curious now. I
Absolutely.
didn't,
And you know what?
yeah.
It explains, it shows people how smart nurses are and how we really
Yeah.
are like the experts in our fields. So it kind of
Yeah.
also shows aerospace that we're not just like pill pushers.
Right. Exactly. Demonstrating the thought process. That's super
Exactly.
important. And so, okay. So let's go back to talking about you specifically and how you got into this and your journey. So, Christine, you spent over a decade in trauma ICU, resuscitation, and critical care flight, still on Earth, before ever touching the aerospace world, as
Yeah.
far as like going out into space. So take us back, and what was the moment that you realized the skills you use here were exactly what the space industry was missing?
It's funny because I always loved space and sci-fi. And when I first got into nursing, I was like, okay, space nursing will be in the future. So let me just start to prepare myself for when that happens. I'll be ready,
Yeah.
right? So I started my career kind of towards the path to flight nursing. And
From the
I
beginning.
yes, from the beginning. So essentially I
Wow.
started in med surge and I got like my, my very strong foundation baseline. And then I went to the ICU and I really loved trauma ICU because it was taking care of the sickest of the sick. And I felt, there's a specialty for everybody. But
Mhm.
I personally felt a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I got a lot of, you know how like when you feel like you actually are fixing people? I got a lot of that from trauma because people come in,
Mm.
after like an accident or something, and they're very, very sick. And we literally like bring them back to like a level where they are much better than when they came in. So I got
Yeah.
a lot of like, I don't know the words. I can't think of the word, but like
Well, like
a lot of,
satisfaction, right?
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I got a
And
lot of
it was
satisfaction from that.
yeah, it was not just meaningful, but like satisfaction, kind of like checking off a to-do list the
Yes.
when you see the results of your work, right? Because I think
Yes,
there's a lot of other
exactly.
specialties that are a lot slower in
Yes.
like you hope that teaching somebody how to take their blood sugar and measure that is going to be effective, but you 100% really don't see that in real life
Yeah, and there's
in
nurses
front
that
of your
get that
eyes.
exactly. There's nurses that get that satisfaction from like oncology and
Yeah.
and med surg and pediatrics, but that's
Mhm.
kind of how I got the satisfaction. So I really enjoyed my time in trauma. Then I eventually did flight. So I did the fixed wing flight
Mm. Okay.
where,
So not
yes,
helicopters.
not helicopter. Rotor wing in this area of Florida is kind of hard to get into because there aren't many. But flight, I did the fixed wing flight and I really enjoyed that. But then I got the opportunity to work at a ground ambulance because I also have my master's in nursing education.
Mhm.
So I was able to fuse those two things together where I'm currently working now. So I work at a ground transport out in a rural area. Uh, and so this is kind of where I got back to space nursing. So
When you got
there's,
further attached to the ground?
yes, because it's
The
funny because
irony.
it doesn't, oh my God, that's so funny. I didn't
It
think
is
about
so
it that way.
funny.
It's like I went down to the ground, but like I am back in
And then took
space
your brain to space.
because it'll make sense when I explain it. But
Okay.
in transport, it's a very low resource area. So it's like you only have what's in your ambulance, right? So you have to make sure that your ambulance is fully stocked before you go out because when you go out, right, you only have what you brought with you. Just like in space, you only have what is up there. Right now, we're able to restock, right, the ISS because it's the International Space Station because it's not that far. But as we go farther and farther and farther, those restocks are going to be farther and fewer between and probably non-existent, right? So that's the one side. The other side is because I'm working in rural health, it's kind of considered an extreme environment because it also is low resource. So I like rural health a lot because you have to do more with less. And that mix of extreme environment and low resource environment is literally an analog for space flight.
Can I pause you right
So
here?
that's
Because,
really what brought me back.
well,
Yeah.
let's take a moment and pause because I'm glad that you are able to enjoy that. But I would also like to highlight for our listeners the fact that working in rural America is equatable to being in Mars as far as resources. And that's not a
Yeah.
good thing. That is preposterous.
Yeah.
And if we can do anything to help supply rural America with better health
Yeah.
care resources,
For
we should
sure.
do that because it doesn't require going to space.
Seriously.
But I
Yeah.
do think that I love that you're taking that and thinking towards the future, right? Because there's a lot of people who just get stuck there and frustrated with the state of rural America's EMS system and don't have the bandwidth to think about, how does this apply in space? How's this going to work if we get up there and we don't have what we need? So,
Yeah.
yes, please continue. But yeah, just had to highlight that.
Yeah, of course. And so I think that there are a lot of things. The thing that gave me the most hope actually was when I went to a EMS conference that also had like a space component to it and it actually was, yes, it's I'm
This
going to plug,
already existed.
It did, and so that was, like, the first place I went to this conference, so I'm gonna plug,
Okay.
ComHit. So it's a ComHit is a conference that is 2 days. One day is usually like a EMS, like community EMS day, and then the second day is its implications for, like, space, right?
Mm,
And so I went to that conference, and that's when I was like, "My people exist."
that's
Shout out to Kendra Seiler,
amazing.
she's great. So and it was actually at Kennedy Space Center.
Oh,
So
okay.
so this is kind of where I was like, not only can we use let me see. Not only can we, talk about space, but we can also connect it and make Earth medicine better by striving for space.
Mm,
One of the things that I saw at that conference was uh, increasing the bandwidth for telehealth for space, because remember, we're going to go farther, we're going to have longer
yes.
communications, is going to help telehealth on Earth, which will have implications for rural areas.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was like, this is it. Like, this is it. Like, we can strive for space while also helping rural areas on Earth. And I was like, I'm sold. That's it.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I mean, and it's kind of like the Starlink, which is, marketed like for that purpose, but then like
Yeah,
in the event of huge natural disasters, like wasn't it Puerto Rico and then North
that's right.
Carolina, they were able to drop off Starlink to improve their emergency response there
Yeah.
as well. So, yeah, definitely more of
Even
that.
even technologies like the portable ultrasound work.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes, so the portable ultrasound was created for disaster areas, and they were able to use it in lower resource countries that can't afford the CT machine or the MRI machine.
Okay.
Ultrasound is, from what I've seen, a lot of research, is just as good in very low resource areas for diagnosis. So, and that came from extreme medicine. So I think that that's really what kind of pushed me to be like, because a lot of people are like, isn't space just for like rich people to like float around and come back? I'm like,
For
there
tourists.
is there is that space tourist side, but there is also like very, very good implications for helping Earth. So space
Can
for
I
Earth
ask
is
a
what they call it.
question?
Yeah.
So you said portable ultrasound is just as good as CT or MRI in low resource countries. Well, should we just be using portable ultrasound instead of CT and MRI here?
We could, but I think it's that CT is superior, but if
Yeah.
you don't have it, ultrasound is a good replacement, if that makes sense.
Okay. And it's definitely more portable than a big old CT
For
machine.
sure. And it
Right.
doesn't require, right, exactly. It doesn't require you having to bring the patient to the machine. You could just have your portable
Bring the machine to
ultrasound
the
and,
patient.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think about that from stroke context. It's like we need a CT to see if there's bleeding in the brain when someone's having a stroke to see if we can give them the clot busting medication. And so, like, they have a portable CT machine and some of these portable, like, mobile stroke units that are like an
Right.
ambulance with a CT machine in it. And so, like, that's a great option. But even that, you got to lug that around, right? So,
Yes. I think that we should have also a conversation because blood clots in space are a big thing.
I want to be on
Yeah.
your podcast. I would be honored. Oh my
Heck yeah,
gosh.
let's do it.
Oh, you're so much fun. We gotta get together in person. I don't know if I
We
can wait
do.
till November. This is awesome. Where do you live?
I live in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay, you live in Florida. Is that where the
Yeah.
Kennedy Space Center is?
Kennedy Space Center is like 2 hours north of me, so it's in
Okay.
Cocoa Beach. Not
Mm,
far. I've made the drive and come
okay.
back in one day. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get back. Let's see. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Where are we?
Okay. We're gonna go to question two.
This episode's gonna be 2 hours long.
Hey, you can be my first. You're my segue into Joe Rogan style podcasts of multiple hours. I never go over an hour, but I try to like have a minimum 20 minutes and then, usually cut off at an hour because I mean, I'd have other things that I have to do, right?
Of
But not
course.
today. Okay, so here we go. So, you describe nurses as the ultimate human integrators, the ones sitting at the center of the wheel, making sure the whole plan of care actually gets completed. So, for listeners who've never thought about space flight as a clinical environment, what does patient care even look like when your patient is 250 miles above the earth?
That's actually a really good question because there are multiple types of patients in the space environment. So in my podcast, we had an interview with Colin Hills, who actually works for NASA. And so his patient are the astronauts in the International Space Station and in low Earth orbit. And so he works to integrate the plan of care, right? Between the flight surgeon, who is the physician who is in charge of the entire plan of care, and the flight controllers, who are essentially the biomedical engineers who control the machinery. That there are many things that the machinery does, but essentially that control the habitat. So remember, it requires a shift in your thinking, because once you get to space, right, the patient is very important, but the habitat is even more important, because if you don't have
Mm,
oxygen, a correct amount of oxygen, if you don't have, if your habitat has a hole in it, right, it
yeah.
is not good for the patient. So the biomedical engineer's job is to take care of the habitat and to make sure that all of the machinery is working. But the problem is that the flight surgeon and the biomedical engineer speak different languages. I've
Mm,
learned that the
yeah.
medical language and the engineering language obviously are not the same, and they speak different languages. So the nurse is in between them to
Of
kind of
course. Uh,
translate what the hello to kind of translate what the physician needs to the
mhm.
flight controller. And I
Wow.
thought that that was so interesting that even at that level,
Right.
that like language disparity exists, right? So that's one side. I have spoken to other nurses who are essentially like occupational health. So there are nurses
Okay.
that work at the space centers, and they are the ones that prepare the astronauts before they go. There is a period of time, and I don't remember off the top of my head how long, but there is a period of time where the astronauts have to go into kind of like a quarantine
Mm.
before they go up, so that they're not bringing any illnesses with them. And the nurses are the ones that care for them during that like pre-flight period. And after the astronauts are brought back, that they're very, debilitated and all that,
Mm.
they are the ones that kind of rehab them again. That's there. And there's a couple of more different. I've spoke to a nurse who works kind of more in like the risk safety area, so it's less nursing care, but it's still nursing care, because we also have to think about, the safety of the patients and things like that. So I'm telling you,
Can you
there's different things.
Yeah. Can you say more about how astronauts are debilitated when they come back?
Sure. After a lot of that is the human body adapting to microgravity, right? So when you are in space and you are floating, right? A lot of things change. Your blood, instead of pulling at your legs because gravity is pulling it down, it actually floats up to your chest and your head, right? Yes, so because the blood is now up in your chest and your head, there is a cascade of events across every body system that happens, where your body's like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but we have to fix this, right? So by the time the astronaut gets back to Earth, all of the blood that was up here is now pulled back to your legs because of gravity, because you're back in gravity, because you have less circulating blood in your body, because the muscles of your legs have atrophied. So it has like broken down because you're not stepping on the floor and things like that. Among other things, because of that, you are much weaker when you come back to Earth. So if you've seen the videos of astronauts coming back to Earth, most of them are literally being carried, or they're in wheelchairs. Uh, Or I think there was also a video of an astronaut like being interviewed, and like she literally just passed out. So
Mm.
that happens because the body adapts to microgravity. And once you
But
come
it's a
back,
sudden reentry.
yes, exactly. So it's like in one day, you're back to, there's no real like acclimation, right? So you're floating up there. Your brain is like, okay, I guess we don't need these leg muscles anymore. Let's break those down and use that somewhere else, right? Okay, there's a whole bunch of blood in the head. I don't know why, but let's, for lack of a better term, let's pee out all of this extra fluid because your body thinks that there's more blood in your body because all the blood is up here, right? And so as nurses, we know that like all of the baroreceptors and the receptors are here in your neck and your head. Those are the ones that regulate the amount of fluid that you have in your body. Because all the blood is up here, your body thinks that you are fluid overloaded, right? So it's like,
Wow.
let me pee off all of this fluid. So you are essentially hypovolemic. So you have less fluid in your body by the time you come back. So it's really so interesting. When I found out how much the body changes in microgravity, that was another thing that got me hooked. I was like,
Right?
it's a whole different form of medicine.
It is, and it I keep having flashes of this show that I watched that has not sponsored my podcast, but maybe they should sponsor yours. I don't know. Have you watched The Expanse?
I haven't. I've heard a lot about it.
Girl, you need to, because I think you should do like a reaction video to The
I will.
Expanse
I'm going to.
because I think it taps into a lot of the things that you're talking about because it's so realistic. Or I would like to know which elements are the most realistic, right? Because
Okay.
they
Yeah.
show a time in the future where there are people living in different planets with different levels of gravity, and they
Yeah.
talk about the people who are living on these smaller planets that have less gravity, their bone structure is different. And the reactions that they have to going from one level of gravity to another. Like the people on Mars are stronger and they have more bone density, more muscle density because there's more gravity on Mars. And so, like, as they have grown up there, like, that's their norm, kind of like somebody living in high altitude. Their tolerance is
Yes.
greater to lower oxygen.
That's really cool.
It is really cool, and when they go into the spaceships, they have the magnet boots so they can walk around, and in the show, they have, they can generate gravity in their ships, but if it goes off, there's a lot of times where they have to activate their magnet boots and walk around, and so it shows that transition that Star Trek never really mentions. Everybody's just got gravity on their ships
Everybody's got
in
gravity.
Star
I'm
Trek.
gonna watch The Expanse because that's really cool. And I really think, yes, it's true. We would have to evolve to be able to, at this point, right? Because we don't have the technology yet. We would literally have to evolve to be able to handle the differences in gravity.
One other thing about The Expanse, because as you were talking, I was thinking of the G-force required in travel and things like that. And there was one episode where I'm not going to say who, no spoilers, but somebody has a stroke because of the
Oh,
G-force. And it like does the animation to like show what's happening in the blood vessels when
that's
that's
so cool.
happening. Yeah. So definitely check out that show. Please do a reaction video because
I
I would
will.
love to hear from you, like what you think is the most realistic and what you think we need to develop that's similar like that, or that maybe
That's
they didn't
awesome.
even think of because we've thought of new things since you've been on the scene. So,
Absolutely, yeah, but that whole it's funny because I watch other shows, I watch For All Mankind, and that, like, gravity thing
Mhm.
eventually eventually shows just start to ignore the differences in gravity, and it's like, "Why is everybody just walking around? Like,
So
what's
are you
happening?"
saying like I haven't seen that? Are you saying like in the beginning of the show they were being more realistic about that and then they forgot about
I
it
think
halfway
so,
through?
yeah. So like when it was because the show starts when I think the show starts because in that reality Russia beat us to the moon, and that like
Oh,
kicked off like a kind of like a space race or whatever that made America advance more than we are
mm,
now.
the
So I think
competition.
at first when they were first like landing on the moon it was a little bit more realistic, but now they have like a moon I mean a Mars colony, and everybody's
Mm,
just walking around. Like there's no like augmented gravity or anything, and they're just walking around, and it's like, hello, what's happening?
that's
But
wild.
anyway,
And now I gotta
it
watch
yeah,
that one. See? You're gonna turn
it
into a TV show recommendation spree.
it's a very good show. I don't know about this season. Well, it got kind of like, what's happening? But
See,
the
then
show's
you
very good.
now you know you can go switch over to The Expanse, and I'll start watching For All Mankind. It's
Absolutely. Let's
balance.
do it.
All right. So going back to your work, you've said that the bottleneck in commercial spaceflight isn't the rockets, it's the human element. And the industry is still running on 1960s era medical infrastructure. What does that outdated system look like in practice? And what happens if it doesn't evolve as flight cadence increases?
So definitely originally, because our space organizations have mostly been in low Earth orbit. So when I say that, I mean like the area like around Earth, the immediate area. It was taking humans and it was a very, let me see. It was mostly a process of exclusion, right? So it's like taking 10,000 people that applied to be an astronaut and whittling it down to the best 10, right? To be able to go to low Earth orbit and be able to deal with the, whatever happens with them in microgravity, right? So that kind of worked because it was a small amount of people going for a short amount of time and only going maybe like once or twice a year, right? So
Mm.
so with that small footprint, we were able to get away with physician flight surgeon kind of handling the whole thing. Now with increased flight cadence, right? And the emphasis on tourism in space, those very strict guidelines don't really apply. So before it was you had to be extremely fit physically and mentally because the FAA had to protect the public, right, from an incapacitated astronaut or pilot, right? But because it's more so space tourism, so it's not like rockets with gas tanks that are going to like explode and cause massive damage to very dangerous, you know, things. It's less about protecting the public from an incapacitated astronaut and more of just making sure that those tourists are healthy enough to go.
Because the
So,
pilot of whatever vehicle that they're on is going through that more rigorous screening
right.
process.
Or in the case of, for example, like Blue Origin, those pods are autonomous, right?
They are?
yes. So the pods that actually took
Oh,
like those tourists up to, for example, like the
yeah.
Katy Perry thing
Mhm.
that took them up to, low Earth orbit and they were able to float around, those were autonomous. So there was no pilot there. It was like literally an autonomous rocket that went up, it floated, and it came back down. Like literally
And people
autonomous.
get scared of riding in a Waymo on Earth. Can you
I
imagine?
wouldn't, but whatever.
I love riding in Waymo, okay?
You do?
My experience okay, if Waymo is listening to this, feel free to sponsor my podcast because I am a fan. Let me share with you my autonomous car experience, okay? The first time I live streamed the whole thing so that if I died, it would be on, record. But it made me feel better to not be less alone in there. But then after that, I took a Waymo at night and I had taken a human driver before that. And it was a very erratic experience. And we almost ran into multiple things slash people. And that driver was stressed out. So I was like, I'm going to try this Waymo thing again. So I took a Waymo at night and we were going, it was like in Phoenix, it was dark, and I didn't see any like foot traffic or anything because it was like after dinner, it was like 9 or 10 at night. And the Waymo kept stopping, like it would start for a second and then stop again. And I didn't see anything. Turns out there was a man who was dressed all darkly and everything, and I would not have seen him. He was jaywalking, crossing the road, and the Waymo picked up on it with its, like, I don't know, heat detecting sensors or whatever it can see with. And I was like, if I was a human driving this car, I would have hit that person probably because I would not have been able
Wow.
to see them. But the Waymo saw it and took precautions and everybody was safe. And so I was like, okay, I feel a whole lot better riding in a Waymo now.
So that sold you
So
on the Waymo.
Sure. I just feel like if I was going to space, though, I might want we want redundancies, right? Like, what if the
Yeah.
autonomous program isn't working? I would like to have someone flying the vehicle as well,
I mean,
like
yeah. And
just
so
to
I feel like
troubleshoot.
if we are ending up going to like the moon or something, I think that that would probably be something that would have like a pilot or something. But it's kind of like using the same standards that you use for the pilot for the passengers of the flight. Does that make sense? It
Exactly.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's not how we do it with current air travel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so because that's kind of what we have right now, it is slowing down like the process of it. And
Mm.
because a lot of people aren't really like thinking in that direction, they're just kind of like, look at the rocket, look at the rover, look at this, look at that, look at this. We're putting money in autonomous drones and rovers and rockets and engineers, and which is amazing, which is great. I'm not saying that that's not important.
We need the
But if
equipment.
we are talking about putting people up there, right? It's funny because like they're like, look at this amazing rover. And there's 2 seats in the rover. It's like, who's gonna sit in those seats? Do we care about the people that are gonna sit in those seats?
Yeah, and I think something you said before we started recording was we have a profile of what the pilot/engineer needs to be in a state of fitness for. But for these tourists who go up into space to float or whatever, they just sign a waiver that's like, well, if I die, it's not your fault. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a safety profile to let them know, am I safe to do this? And we don't really have this criteria. It's like, you're not safe enough to be a pilot/astronaut, but is this something that you should be concerned with your health about? Or is this something that you are at a state of fitness for that your risk profile is a lot lower?
Right. And in the end, those waivers don't protect the companies like they think it will. Because
Oh,
if
really?
you think about things like the Titan submersible, right? It's like they also signed all those people that were on the Titan. You remember the Titan submersible?
Yeah.
It was the
Who could forget,
submarine that
right?
went down and imploded. Yeah. So all of the people on the submersible actually signed waivers, and apparently the waivers mentioned the word death like 6 times, right? And they all signed the
It
waiver.
should have, yeah.
Yeah, but they all signed the waiver, but in the court of public opinion, right? Everybody was like, this is outrageous. Like, and so, when the public gets upset, somebody has to be held accountable. And essentially, the Titan submersible company just kind of like disappeared, because if something were to happen to people in space, it doesn't matter if the people in the rocket signed the waiver. The FAA is gonna come in and regulate the whole thing, and it's going to literally stop progress. I mean, look at
Well,
what
it sounded
happened.
like that was progress that needed to stop
But that's true.
when we
And
were
so
going.
I'm
If you're going to
exactly
go down
and
a
what I'm
sinking
saying
ship
is
like that.
paying attention at that time, instead of just let's move fast and break things, right? We have to stop and be like, okay, there's people involved, so we have to at least make
Yeah.
sure that the people are safe, right?
Yes.
And so I think that there's a way that you can move fast and break things, but also be safe
Yeah, oh,
enough
for
to
sure.
keep the regulatory bodies out of the industry. So
Yeah.
just
I think
look
we
at
can
like
do better than the regulatory industries. It takes so long for something to become a regulation.
exactly. And so I think that if we just get the protocols in place now,
Mhm.
right, none of that will ever have to happen. So I think that's
Yeah,
part of it. And because there's a lot of engineering involved, people probably just don't know where to start. So
for sure. So
yeah.
you've discovered that clinical systems integrator roles already exist within NASA contracting, and nurses qualify for them right now. They just don't know it. So, what should a nurse listening today actually do this week if they want to explore aerospace nursing? Obviously, they should, number one, start listening to the Space Nurse podcast for examples. But if they want to be looking at things while they're listening, what should
Yeah.
they be searching for?
I think there's a few things that they could do to get familiar with the industries. First things first, NASA has a lot of free resources that I took advantage of that you can also take advantage of. The first thing that we know as nurses is to know your patient, right? So there are a lot of free resources when it comes to learning what microgravity does to the body. So NASA also has um in their website, if you look up the 5 hazards of spaceflight, it teaches you about what gravity or lack thereof does to the body, what radiation does to the body, and isolation, what that does to the body. So all of the different 5 hazards. Very important to get familiar with that first. Then after that, I would probably focus on the human engine and engineering, like where those things meet. There is a document called NASA Standard 3001 that actually shows you what NASA thinks is important when it comes to building hardware, but when it comes to the body. So for example, I'm going to give you one example. If you build a rover with a seat, your seat has to be able to accommodate a person of the 5th percentile for height and weight, all the way up to the 99th percentile for height and weight. So it has to be adjustable to be able to accommodate that range of person, right? So I think that NASA Standard 3001 is a good one to read because it will show you the human factors part of it, which is very important. When I say human factors, I mean how humans interact with machine. I actually also interview a human factors engineer. I'm actually going to post that soon. And she actually gives really good insight into what is important as far as building machines for humans. Human factors engineer is a role that a nurse could, if they wanted to. For example, if you are a nurse that's already interested in doing like a PhD or a master's, you probably could do your PhD in human factors and you would be very competitive for those kind of roles.
Would that qualify as a professional degree?
I think so. I think
Well,
engineering is considered a professional degree.
well, then how about nurses quit limiting their professional aspirations to things that are labeled nursing and just use their nursing skills for professional degree programs that recognize their professionalism?
That's a good point. That is a very good point.
I
Absolutely.
bet some academic nurses would really be mad at me for saying that. But if it funds the, ongoing of the profession and using their
I mean,
skill sets
I mean,
helpfully.
what are you going to do? A lot of my message is that nurses already have skill sets that prepare them for things outside of nursing. They just don't know it. And so that's actually a really good jump off point. If you're,
Yeah.
kind of like sick of bedside, and I know there's like you said, a lot of people that are like, why are you telling them to leave bedside? Right? I mean, we
They
exist.
already are. They
Yeah,
already are.
they're
They're already
leaving.
doing it. What they need to
So
do is not leave the entire profession and forfeit
exactly.
all of their skills that they've developed that can benefit society and bring their desire to improve things with them.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Big
There's a lot of
picture.
opportunities in med tech and health tech and, like I said, human factors, and
Yeah.
that's all important in this coming age of commercial space.
Yeah. Well, at this point, I need to ask you the question I ask every guest on the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast, which is, Christine, look at you gearing up for this. Okay. Christine, if you were given a grant for $1 billion to meet a need you see in healthcare, how would you like to see it used strategically to have the most sustainable impact?
So before I answer this question, I wanted to ask you, so
Oh.
do you need the answer to fix healthcare, like this broken system that we have, this like, or
A need,
just in general? Okay.
a need that you see in healthcare. If we fix that with $1 billion, and could it have sustainable impacts ongoing and reduce that from continuing to be a contributing factor to the broken nature of health?
$1 billion.
A lot of people don't think of $1 billion being used as a fix for a micro solution, but people who talk about the big money in healthcare call $1 billion something that would fund a micro solution.
A micro, so can you believe $1 billion funding a micro solution?
That's how broken the system is. That's how big the brokenness is that it might seem like a drop in a bucket, but what it really is it can plug a hole.
I'm not gonna lie. So I would $1 billion could
Mhm.
fund a private, like a public insurance fund so that people without insurance could get insurance.
A public or a private? What are you saying? I think you said
I
both,
feel
so
because I said public and private, but
mhm.
like it is private, but private would assume that, well, technically it is private because it would be a company with but I said public because anybody could partake in it. Let me see. Let's
So,
scratch that.
I feel
Mhm.
like you wanna give Mark Cuban $1 billion to just keep on going with cost plus drugs because they have that insurance option now. He's doing that. That's a good one.
'Cause the answer that I gave you in my form was to
Yeah.
skip, like, the VC phase and just, like, create the Space Nurse LLC, create the certification for the clinician bioastronautics certification that I wanted so that, we can have a clinical bioastronautics person, and
But you could do that
also
with a couple $100,000
yeah, you're right.
and get
You're
you
right.
could get ANCC certified.
Yes, I know, that's $4,500. I already looked
Right.
into that.
It seems so insurmountable, but in the grand scheme of things, looking at $1 billion, you do a
Yeah.
lot more than
I'm
that.
not gonna lie, $1 billion could fix this, what is it, medical industrial complex?
Yeah. Okay. How could it?
I think that literally the problem with the medical industrial complex is literally the middleman. So the middleman is the one that is inflating costs, right? And
The
so that's
insurance companies and the
yes,
pharmacy benefit managers?
they are the ones that are inflating the
Mhm,
costs of care, right? And so
mhm,
but not improving care.
mhm,
Right? So I feel like $1 billion could create a different health insurance program that
mhm.
would get rid of that.
So I feel like you are Mark Cuban's new best friend and that you
He
believe
has like a drug company or something, right?
well, okay. Yes, Mark Cuban, Cost Plus Drugs. He has not sponsored me. I did meet him, but he hasn't been on this podcast yet. But yes, we
Come on, Mark Cuban.
for come on, Mark Cuban. We believe in you. We believe in what you're doing, and that you can fix healthcare by breaking the current system and replacing it with something better. Because that's exactly what Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs is doing. It is working to eliminate the middleman of the pharmacy benefit managers and how they are able to inflate the costs of things. They are owned by the insurance companies. And so they pocket all that middleman money into the insurance companies. So by democratizing the cost of these drugs, which is most anything that can be made generically, there are a few drugs that can't be made generically that are kind of holdouts in the system. Namely, like Eliquis is one that impacts a lot of my stroke patients, and so that's like one of their top priorities is to try to get something like that. But they've also it's not just drugs at this point where you can get really affordable medications that are made in America instead of having to get them overseas. Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs is manufacturing them in America, and some of them so far because we saw those supply chain issues during the pandemic
Right.
that put us at a great risk, right? And then
Yeah.
they've developed now Mark Cuban Cost Plus and Wellness, I think is what it's called, which is their insurance plan option that's supposed to
Okay.
be a competitor option. And the thing is, they've
Yeah.
capped the percentage of profit margin at 15. So
Yeah.
it's a sustainable business model, but it's not like 70, 90%, whatever the PBMs are working with over here.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
okay to have a profit, but by capping it at 15%, it's like this is what we're doing to improve the health of the nation, not to make a massively profitable company. It still will be, but
Right.
without taking advantage
When
of people. So,
when I learned that there was somebody whose job is to decide like what is appropriate care, not the doctor, like they're literally in the way and saying, "No, doctor, you don't know what you're talking about. This is what our insurance company says is correct care." It's like, what is happening?
right. And like well, there was that AI being used to automatically deny 90% of claims. And once appealed, over half of those are approved. So they were inappropriate denials that were
Right.
automated. But now, even taking out that automation, they still have this, we got to do a peer to peer, and the people making these decisions, even if their physicians are not specialized in that area to make those decisions, and they're not respecting the physicians who are like, this is my specialty. This is what this patient needs that I'm looking at, that I feel responsible for giving them the
Yes.
best care. So, to your point, how I would verbalize in addition to what Mark Cuban is doing, if I may,
Yeah, of
I
course.
I think that filling that in, like direct primary care, is a big thing that would contribute to improving the way healthcare is delivered in our country for prevention and wellness, because so many people don't have access to primary care, and the way that it's currently set up with those insurance companies dictating what is covered, and then also the reimbursement model leading the administrators of those offices and hospital networks to prioritize number of people seen versus the quality of care provided. And maybe this patient needs you to spend an hour with them, and that'll keep them from being admitted to the hospital for the rest of the year because you were able to have the time to listen to them and really consider what they need and educate them on what they need to do to have a better health. And
Yep,
so,
definitely.
yeah, I think $1 billion invested in direct primary care and piloting and ramping up how is the most effective way to use that, that's not how many people can you see in an hour, but what level of care, more
Yes.
value-based care model.
And I think that that's very true because where I work now, they do have clinics that are primary care clinics for the community that they can see at low cost or for free. And so I think that that is very important to kind of fix the social determinants of health
Yes,
because a lot of people can't get to, they can't afford it. They can't afford their medications. They don't have a ride to get their medications. It's a lot of things. And I think that those primary care clinics really do help a lot with not only people being able to get primary care, but being able to understand why they're taking their meds, to be able to make their own decisions so that they don't have to go to the ER as much.
exactly. And we all know, like us nurses know, we don't want to go to the hospital unless absolutely necessary. Right?
Oh my god, I am that mom. Like my daughter will come up to me and be like, "Mommy, I hit my toe. It hurts." And I'm like, "Okay, do you?" And I look at her and she already knows what's coming. I'm like, "Okay, do you need surgery? You need me to chop it off?"
Right?
And
Like, how bad is it?
she goes, "No, mommy, I'm just
Mhm.
telling you." And I'm like, "Okay."
Eh, let me kiss it and then it's better.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
I'm like,
Because
"Wiggle the toe. If it's not
right,
broken, we're not at my level yet."
right. My kids have very dramatic ways of describing things to me, and I'm like, well, if that is the case, then we're gonna have to go to the doctor and get a syringe, and you're gonna have to get a shot. And they're like, oh, it's not that bad.
The shot, that's the one. It's like, "Okay, let's go
So
to
if
the
they
ER and
tell
get
me,
shots."
okay, is there a shot that'll help with this? I'm like, oh, we're going to the doctor now, because if you're asking for that, then it must be bad.
Yep.
You know, the pain versus shot.
Yes, yes. How
So,
afraid are we of the shot?
right, exactly. That's our pain scale. The faces are not helpful. We should have a scale of like shot to no shot.
Yes,
That's our new pain scale.
that's a good one.
To see that this is how us nurses are coming up with new frameworks for screening.
Oh my god, the space nurse and, Nurse Rosa's insight new framework for pain.
The parents version,
We
the
can write a
nurse
white
mom
paper.
version. Oh, yeah, the nurse mom version. That's what we can call it. How about
That's it.
that?
That's a good
Awesome.
one.
Well, I think this was an amazing conversation, and I
That
am
was great.
so not over talking to you because we've got to keep this conversation going. Is there anything else that you would like to share that I didn't ask you
I
about?
wanted to, yeah, I just wanted to say, along with the, a lot of the NASA resources that I gave you guys, any, clinician that might be interested could go to the spacenurse.com. And I also have like a free list of resources if you subscribe to my newsletter. And also the Space Nurse podcast is on there. and on Spotify, and I think I'm on Amazon also. So
I
check
bet you
me
are.
out. A lot of my social media stuff is on LinkedIn also. So follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I did follow you on Instagram though, and I will put all of your links in the show notes so people can find you where they like to go.
I'm working on Instagram. If you get on Instagram, and I'm working on Instagram, guys. Don't give me more followers, but just like don't be deterred. I'm gonna get back on Instagram.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. You're making a real impact. So for our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode of the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. If you found us in the Health Podcast Library, if you subscribe there, then you'll get an email notification every week to let you know when the new episode has come out. So definitely hit the follow button there. If you're watching on YouTube, please also leave a comment and let me know what you learned, or if this made you want to be a space nurse too. Or if you know someone who has a great answer to the $1 billion question that just needs to see more of the light of day, please point them in my direction, because that's what this is for, is to amplify the insights of any healthcare stakeholder who can put forward solutions to build a better healthcare. And I will see you in the next episode.